All right, hey there guys, Sam back with you here. We'll finish up with a look at TRX or Tron to Bitcoin by request, right? As always, members choose these. I'm looking here, this is a 2 hour on Binance. All right, so it looks a little better in here. We've had a nice motive wave. Now there's a couple of judgment calls you need to make here that I don't think you can go 1-2. I just don't think it plays as well. You'd have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5. I just don't think you can make that case. So I'm more inclined to go with, just in general, we'll call this a double bottom down here, despite we've got some wicks that, yeah, they did go through. But we can work from this low here, and I can get a good 1, 2, 3, 4. Now here again, got to use a bit of judgment here. So at first glance, it would be very tempting to think, oh, well, there's the 3, there's the 4, and there's the 5. But it just doesn't work. See, this looks much more like an ABC. So I think what we get here is a very, very steep B relative to the depth of the retracement rather than a truncated fifth. I just think it plays better here. And well, there's a few things here. So, let's see. We could take the length of the 1 through 3 and hang on. I'm getting a reload message here. 1 through the 3 from the 4, kind of in between. If this is the 3, it's not great. So you're kind of left kind of wondering here, saying, you know, of course, why does it stop there? So, well, and again, I like to show these here just to remind you that you got to look, you got to think outside of the box here. So we come over here, if I can get right on there. Dial it in. There we go. Okay, so pivot. Let's tighten that up just a hair. May not be to the tick. There we go. Okay, so I've just got 3 pivots here, but again, it's very easy to think, oh, shit, why do I care about those pivots? Well, it's worth checking them because what it gives you is confidence that I've got a technical pivot up here. Right after the fact. But if you were looking up here and you're trying to figure out, the question is always, why does it stop there? Well, that certainly could be a factor here, right? And whether it's, it doesn't quite hit it, it's just a little shy of tagging it, that's one of the few sats. That's pretty close here. Now, is it going to set up a move greater than or equal to the move that failed? Well, you just keep going and you keep looking, saying, well, what else could they be using? Right, and then I kind of noticed that. So that makes me think I've got a technical pivot down here. So if I've got this correctly identified as an A, B, C into the B, and we've come down, possibly now, well, we've run into this structure, right? So just taking those 2 wicks, right? Those 2 pivots, we split it. We literally tag this median line right on the center line. A little unorthodox, but it's just one more thing that most people won't have identified that we can look at and say, well, it's one more thing to suggest that I've got support here. Well, there's the obvious structure. There's an Elliott count that gets you here. I've got a median line that's being tagged damn near to the tick. And then, of course, right? Of course. Well, pardon me. If we're going to start here with the beginning of it, if this is the completed 5, let's get right on it. All right, so we get a nice little cluster of confluence right here, right? Just a perfect spot to be looking for a buy there, right? We've got all the conditions you'd look for, right? Does that mean, it's not guaranteed to hold, but it's enough of a reason to be looking here. Do I have a count here that would make sense? So I can combine pattern, the last algo play, some market geometry. I've got a completed ABC. I've got all the conditions. Now, Elliott aside, you could just take dominant swing to dominant swing. Well, here's a 50. Yeah, it's not to the tick. So you look, I wonder why it goes through the 50. Is it to tag some of this, test some of this structure, test some of this resistance? Is that indeed going to hold as the support? You make your best judgment there because you've got a relatively low risk area to be a buyer. Now, does that mean we're going off and that this is 1, 2 for sure? Well, it's, no way to know. But you certainly, at the very least, you've got a reason to be looking here. So since we've seen the reaction coming off of the tag of the median line and this structure here, there's a reasonable case that we've got a solid technical pivot here. So if this is going to complete, we're going to go up a degree and we're going to go into this as a 1. This is the 2, 3, 4, and 5 still to come. Well, let me get that up a degree so it makes sense here. We'll go up to minuet. All right, so It's a contender. So potentially there's a 1-2. So with this now established as a potential pivot off of this somewhat unusual set of median lines, well, now I'd go more traditional. I'd use that pivot. I've got a technical pivot here. Now we see why. So it's hard not to like that. Hard not to like it. You've got just enough ingredients down here to say, okay, I think I've got a technical pivot here. All of the structure supports it. The Elliott count supports it. There's an algo play there. I've got new market geometry that I can draw. We know that the market is responding to geometry, so I've got 1, 2. Now, is that going to be the 3? Well, likely not if we're going to get a true motive wave. But I've got a target, and I've got a corner pocket here. So not a golden, but we're still sitting right at a 50. So the premise is that I can take this trade with a stop underneath this pivot, because as long as this pivot holds, I have 80% probability of making the median line. Now, we could do it tomorrow, could do it. I mean, there's no way to know, right? So it's not, there's a bit of a leading indicator component to it. But if we were thinking about a true third and we were going to get up to this, well, you know, we could do it. If we're going to, let's be optimistic for the discussion. If we were going to get a true third up here, you'd be looking for it up at this range here. We know that would be very close to the 1618. That's our shorthand for it. The negative 100. So if I've got 1, 2, well, it's not likely to go straight. So you might get something like this and go 3, 4, 5, something like that. You just don't know. I just know I've got an algo that's participating here, and I've got a target. So no way to know how we respond here, other than I've got a clear trade setting up with it where I can let the market determine whether or not I'm right or wrong. All right. So if I'm going to use that as my first target, let me fatten this up. All right. So let's say we're going to go after that target. What kind of risk reward do I have there? Well, that's 3.35 to 1. That's assuming you're just a tick under the 65. Now, you don't need to give it that much room. So if you were giving it that much room, you'd be making the accommodation to say that if this 50 breaks, they're going to take it down here to the golden zone. I'm going to get more of a 5 here, and we're going to redraw the set of median lines. Now I potentially might have a golden. There would be your golden. So we'd be anticipating more length in that fifth. So it doesn't invalidate the idea of a bullish trade, right? It just reorients the pivots. So now, we're not there yet. If this pivot holds, I've got, again, 80% probability of making the median line. So the target hasn't moved. The only difference is, do I want to be a buyer here at the 50, or do I want to wait for the 618? Well, if you wait, right, it may never get there. So at the moment, get that off of here. The trade is right here. So you have to make a judgment call as to whether or not, and it's not a huge number here. You could take the first trade there on the assumption that that pivot needs to hold to maintain that 80%. So you could be a buyer here. Let's get along on this. So let's say you're buying it right now as you're watching this. You've got first target here. We'll just use a first target. I do not need to go beyond that pivot. I could just hold it right there. There's 8.5 to 1. And that's assuming I'm going to get a front run here on the target. If I go right to it, I've got 8.6 to 1. So, you look at that and you say, okay, what's wrong with it? Why would you not take that trade? Well, maybe you could make a case that if I go down to the hourly, that the 5 is not, there's not enough definition in the 5 to really lean into that 5. I feel that. Right? You can dig it out there. There's the 3, 4, 5. At some point, they all break down. There's just no way to dig anything more out of that. But the 2, you could make the case that the 1, 2, the 2 is so steep to get this little baby 4. Well, it's not out of bounds. So if that is the 3 here, well, we go to the 23. We're in between the 23 and the 38. We don't quite make algo target. It could be this structure here that you've got, that they found support there. They found buyers here, and you've had a little kick off of that. Now we're not screaming away from it, but I think you got clearly a potential trade here with a very low risk reward. And if it's going to hold, right? So if this is going to hold, that 80% stays intact. And I think, as I recall, there was some question mark here. So if we use, if this is correctly identified, and that's open to interpretation. If I use the 1, 2 here, we come down here. So here's the 1618, 175 window. So there is a case to be made for the idea that given just typical wave relationships, that the 5 is not done, that we're going down for the golden, that's just the 3 given that wave structure, and then any push we're into here is just accommodating the larger 5 wave structure here. So this could be 3, 4, and then we'd come down for a 5 like that. Now, if that's the case, you're going to take a very small loser here, right? But you will get stopped out, and all you're doing is setting up the potential golden corner down here. Now, you're going to need to like the structure. I'm not saying sit with an order down here. You're going to need to like it, but that structure looks a bit better. So this whole set of median lines would pull down, and now you've got the golden corner pocket. So I'd rather take the small loser here. If it comes down, if it's offered in the golden zone or at the 618, reevaluate, put the whole trade back together down here. And, I would give it a little cushion there. So maybe you're on a slight front run. You've taken one loser on the assumption you follow my advice and take the stop there. Well, now you've got an 11.5 to 1, so plenty to get well to compensate you for the loser that you took here. I mean, at some point you gotta say, well, I like the structure, I like everything I see, I'm willing to pull the trigger, knowing that I could easily just be putting in the 4, and if that starts to roll over, well, if you get a little kick off of this, you could tighten up your stop even further and reduce the exposure. So either this is going to turn here and we're going up. Either we're going to turn and go up, or this is going to roll over here. So this of course will be in play. We'll want to pay attention to that wave 1 pivot here. So let me get this off of here. And of course we'll have, if the 2 to the 3 is correctly identified here, well, here's the 50 on the way back. So there will be a counter. There will be a counter right here. There'll be another set of algos. I can get that. That will be there looking for that. We'll look where their target is. All right, so you see that? So their target would be right here. So the algo target on this pull, if I wiggle that, so you see the green line, if I put it right back here, is going to be right smack in, right at just a tick or two in front of the 6-5. So if this is we're going to finish with better structure in the 5th of the C, which would, it would look better. So the A to the B to the C, this will look better here, as you'll have, because of the depth of the B, the abruptness of the A. This, I would, of the 2 trades, I would prefer this because I'd have more confidence that we had completed this 5 here. So I like this trade better, but you don't know that it's going to get there. So it's, maybe you take a third of what you might allocate to this trade here, so at least you've got a piece of it. If it comes down to the 6-5, your choice, whether you take the stop here and just get out, and then consider reloading at full size here at the golden zone, because your stop can be relatively close underneath the 65. And if that gets stopped, well, you took 2 very small losers, and you wait for a little more confirmation. Where's the low? If I've taken 2 in a row like that, trying to tag an algo play, I'll wait, and we go lower. I'll wait now because I want a little more confirmation. So if we're going to go 786, I'll wait. Give me a little motive. I might go down to the hourly's ideal. I'll take that because I know that if I buy there, I know I'm wrong here at that pivot. All right, so if I can get something like that. So there's your setup, the potential there. One small loser, one trade with a small amount of risk, a second trade with a smaller amount of risk. If those 2 get stopped out, I'd be very selective about that second one, and I wouldn't try and buy it as it's coming down. I'd wait for a pivot, give me a little bit of a push off of it, a little more than just that. Give me a little more of a push off of it. I'll take the next 50. Right, that'll be 3 times that I would try at that. But after that, I'd kind of wait and get a little more data to see what's really going on there. So very tradable and very technical. So first one already in play. All right, guys, that's one to watch. Talk to you later.